And but my grandfather and my grandmother, they had 12 kids. So one of the oldest sisters came over, another brother came over, and another brother came to America. And then my dad was over here too, in America from 1927 until 1945. And after he was denazified, because he had no problem, because he was in America all the time, all that was going on in Germany. Hitler didn't get in power until 1933. So he knew some people from the police from the old days, and he got to be a border police commissioner. And in Coburg, he had like 250 men under him. And the American troops that occupied the zone against the Czechoslovakia, like together, they told my dad that if I could come over there as a service, they could call me to get me to be in that area, but they couldn't get me from America. At that time, the Korean War was on. I went to basic training in Fort Lee, quartermaster school. We had 8 weeks of combat training, infantry training, and then 8 weeks of supply record specialist. Just before Christmas of 51, we were sent to Seattle up there to the fort. I forget the name of the fort. And then we shipped out to Korea.
Fort Lewis.
Fort Lewis, huh? Yeah, okay. And no, I can't remember. I couldn't understand. It was just 3 days before Christmas. They could have left us home for Christmas, but no, they had to be there. And these old barracks, they didn't have a latch. They had it was like a barn door. I mean, I couldn't understand that. Well, we went to ship to Japan, and there we got. Then some stayed in Japan. Some I was sent to the 60th Engineer Company in Korea. Was part of the 552nd Engineer Base, and I was a 38, 35 supply record specialist. And about 6 months later, they sent our sergeant home. They got another guy in, and he was lush. I mean, so they didn't want him around, so they asked me if I would take over the supply room. Now here I'm a PFC, acting supply sergeant, and it worked out. I mean, then when I was ready to come home in July of '53, they called me in and said, well, we could make you corporal now. Well, I said, no, I want to go home now. I hadn't seen my parents in 7 years. For some reason, they had a freeze on in southern Korea, and there was no ranks being made. That kind of ticked us off, because we had one guy, Friedman, who took a 3/4 ton truck, ran it off the bridge, broke his arm, and they sent him to Japan. And when he was halfway well, they put him in charge of bicycles, and they made him corporal. And that was in Japan. I mean, you know, and we're saying here we're in a war zone, and well, who knows? The Army has their funny ways of doing things. But my dad came back at that time to reopen the consulate in New Orleans. They lived in Lakeview. When I came home, I moved in with them. After 3 months, my mama said, you know, Alphonse, Papa's been wondering why you're not looking for something to do. And I said, well, I just like it home now. It was so nice sitting around doing nothing, you know. But,
so you were 23, 24?
23. I was born 1930, so I was 23 years old, yeah, when I came back. And so then I went to Delgado School, and they had a bunch of kids they had kicked out of school there, and nobody wanted to learn it. They had a good man there that was teaching baking, and he made ice sculptures and all kinds of stuff, and I really wanted to learn that. But I couldn't take that, I mean, because if you can't learn nothing, I mean, that's... So there was a German baker. He was actually a Kotbika-Meister, which is a fancy cake baker, on South Carrollton, named Wilhelm Schiel. And I went to him, and he hired me, and I worked over there for 3 years, and met my wife, and just 2 weeks ago, we've been married 53 years. Got 6 kids, 4 girls, 2 boys. 2 girls first, and my dad called, Alphonse, what are you doing? Where are them boys? Well, thank God, the next one was a boy. I had 2 more girls and another boy, so. But they all worked in the bakery. We had the bakery from 59 till 80. And they learned on the weekends where the other guys were out smoking pot and stuff, they were working. And they learned how to work. Because in the bakery you can't, you gotta work, you gotta put your stuff out. Everybody got their job. And like I say, we're all happy and healthy, and I'll be 80 this month. And getting old, but if anybody has any questions, I would glad to. I mean, first he's going to talk a little bit.
Al, let me ask you, you related a story to me about the close call that your father had just before y'all left Paris.
Right.
I think that they would be interested in that.
Okay, good. When the Germans left Paris, actually, they did not bomb Paris, they did not do anything to Paris. I lived in Paris, everything was nice. And when they were pulling out, the underground came and they were shooting them in the back, shooting here, shooting there and everything. They could have really done damage. But the German embassy left, and my dad was supposed to stay and hand over the embassy to the new authorities. Last minute they said, well, you know, Mr. Kleindienst has a wife and 2 sons. I think we ought to leave somebody there who's single, who doesn't have any family. And that was lucky for my dad, because the guy that left there, when they came in there, they strung him up, they hung him. So thank God that my dad made it through. And my dad was had a run-in with Hitler when he was in Munich in 25. Hitler was an Austrian, so he had to I don't know exactly how it went, every 6 months he could come in and get a renewal. Every year he had to go back to Austria and come back in. Well, it was his time to go back out and come back in, and he didn't want to do that. He got all mad and started yelling and screaming. And so he wanted to see my dad's supervisor. So my dad says, okay, he got the supervisor, and he left. So I don't know what happened on that deal, but he never talked much about Hitler or anything. He was over in America since 1927. Didn't like the man when he first saw him, so he, when he was in Paris, some people had uniforms. I never saw him wear a uniform, never had a uniform. I would have known, because kids love that kind of stuff. I mean, that's why I love collecting, and that's why I love uniforms and everything, because I was there, I saw all these guys wearing uniforms, and went through a lot of bad bombing. I remember the last, about 2 months before the war was over, a German soldier had come who lived in that apartment house with us in Oberauto, and they had air raids, so we all went in the basement, and he said, hey, why don't we go out and just sit under the shed and look up? So we looked up, and all of a sudden here came about, I don't think it was about 18 lightnings, and all of a sudden they made a circle. And we were only about a half a block from the railroad train. And the railroad from Rosenheim down to the Brenner Pass into Italy, and that's where a lot of the supplies was moving. And all of a sudden the first guy came down, and when they come down, and you're only half a block away, it looks like they're coming right at you. But they each had a bomb, and they dropped them on the railroad track. And so that was kind of an experience. So we had all